Friends, I welcome you all to the CA Foundation Cum CLAT lecture series sponsored by Sri Jendra Rangson. So now we'll begin with the lecture number 1 in the Indian Contract Act. Okay, this Indian Contract Act is going to be a part of syllabus for both CLAT aspirants as well as CA foundational aspirants. Okay, so it's going to be an interlink between both the courses, and it is a very, uh, I mean, very detailed act, and a lot of questions are asked from this act. So you have to be very careful with this act. Okay, we'll do this act in a very detailed manner. This Indian Contract Act 1872 is the year in which we got this act. So this act was passed on 1st of September 1872. Definitely, who passed it? British Parliament. British Parliament passed it, and since we were ruled by Britishers that time, so it was applicable in India as well. Initially, it had only 75 sections. Okay, sorry, only first 75 sections we have to do for both CA as well as CLAT people. Basic principles, which involves basic principles, special contracts on intermediate etc. So now let us first understand why do we have a contract act. Let's go for some of the history of the Indian Contract Act. First of all, understand how a law is formed. Why do we need a law? First of all, some problem occurs. Okay, society finds that there is some problem, like recently legislature passed farm bills. Okay, parliament passed farm bills. Why Parliament passed these farm bills? Because Parliament thought that there is some problem which is required to be solved. Then the solution is thought and regulation of behavior. Okay, solution. What is the solution and regulation of behavior? How do we regulate that behavior? Now, which behavior is being regulated here? Now they are saying that farmers can sell anywhere they want to. Earlier, they could have sold only in the marketing committees. That was their behavior. They used to sell there. Rule book laid before both the houses. Okay, then a rule book is drafted, okay, which contains all the rules, which is laid before both the houses, that is Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha. Then a discussion happens, then it is passed, okay, either by sound motion, by hands, or standing up, voting, etc. There are so many ways of passing a law, and then it receives the president's assent, and a notification is then issued. This is the process of a bill becoming a law. Okay, why Contract Act was formed in 1872? French Revolution came up, as we all know, in 19th century. French Revolution came up, and Industrial Revolution also came up along with the French Revolution. So after Industrial Revolution, so many industries came up. This East India Company is also one such industries. Okay, contracts started forming up. When you have industries, definitely you need raw material. Then you will sell your produce as well, and so many other stuff. You will hire people as well. So contracts start forming up, and then when the contracts started forming up, there were issues in the contracts as well. Definitely, when contracts are going to be there, then disputes regarding contracts are going to be there. So cases went to the British courts. Okay, so many cases went to the British courts, and then courts used to decide them as per their own thinking, as per their own good sense or the wisdom, because there was no law that time. So the new situation came up. What was the new situation? That now people are entering into contracts, and then contracts are going to the courts, but we have no law to regulate the procedure of contract. So parliament brought a law. It ensures the party from the breach of contract. The contract law is basically tells you how you have to enter into contract, why two people should enter into contract, and what will happen if the contract is breached. Breach means you do not follow. Breach is unfollowing a contract, not fulfilling, not fulfilling a contract is breach of the contract. However, it is breached, how it has to be entered, how it is to be redressed, etc. All the procedures of the contract, relating contract, and how you have to redress if there is some issue pertaining to a contract. 1872 came up in India as well. That is why we have a Indian Contract Act. So now in this chapter we are going to understand about contract and the basics of contract. What are the elements of a contract, and what are the essentials of a valid contract, then how many types of contracts are there. We'll understand what is an agreement, how contract is enforced at the law, what is offer, what is acceptance, and what are the all the essentials, communication of offer, essentials of proposal, kinds of offer, legal rules of a valid offer, legal rules for valid acceptance, communication of acceptance. Okay, we are going to understand about this. Now let's go for a brief introduction of the law of contract. As a result of increasing complexities of business environment, innumerable contracts are entered into by parties in a usual course of carrying on their business. Okay, contract is the most usual method of defining the rights and duties in a business transaction. So rights and duties are determined by the contracts in a business transaction, like contract of employment, how much salary I will get, what are going to be my leaves, what are going to be my working hours, what is going to be my job profile. These are all decided by contract. That is why it is very important, a very crucial law for anyone who wants to even commence a business. Forget about CA law. Anyone who wants to commence any business, anyone who wants to do any single commercial activity, whatever be that, whatever be the scale, size, magnitude of that activity, contract law is very basic, and we all must understand it. Okay, so you are requested to pay deep attention to this particular lecture. Is the most usual method. This branch of law is different from other branches of law in a very important aspect. It does not prescribe so many rights and duties. Okay, it does not give you so many rights and duties. Okay, like other laws, they give you a lot of rights and duties that you can do this, you can do that. Okay, which the law will protect or enforce. It contains a number of limiting principles, okay, subject to which the parties may create rights and duties for themselves. Okay, it provides you, rather than providing you right and liberties, duties, it leaves it to you people, contracting parties, that you can create as many rights and as many duties for yourself as you want. Okay, the Indian Contract Act 1872 codifies the legal principles that govern contracts. The act basically identifies the ingredients of a legally enforceable valid contract, in addition to dealing with certain special type of contractual relationships like indemnity, guarantee, bailment, pledge, quasi-contract, contingent contracts, etc. We'll later on read about these terms. Okay, what are indemnity, guarantee, bailment, pledge, quasi-contract, contingent contracts, etc. Moving to the another page. All agreements are not studied under the Indian Contract 1872, as some of those are not contracts. Only those agreements which are enforceable by the law are contracts. Okay, now this is a very important observation. You must understand this. I'll just write. All contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not contracts. Okay, so you keep this statement in the background, and we'll come back to this statement after a few seconds. So let's first of all understand what is a contract. The term contract is defined under Section 2H of the Indian Contract Act 1872 as follows: an agreement enforceable by law. Okay, so basically it's a very small statement, but let us analyze it. It has two essential elements. First is an agreement. It talks about an agreement. Okay, this is the first part. Second part is enforceable by law. Okay, so any agreement which is enforceable by law will become a contract. Okay, so all contracts are agreements. So anything which has become enforced by the law, any agreement which has been enforced by the law, will automatically become a contract. Till the time it is not enforced by the law, it will only remain a agreement. That is why we say all contracts are agreements. Okay, so whatever has passed the scrutiny of law, whatever agreement has been tested by the court and been implemented or enforced, it becomes a contract. but there may be other agreements which are not enforceable at all, so they will not become contract, they will only remain agreements. I'll just give you an example that A enters in agreement with B to steal 1,000 rupees. Okay, now A enters into agreement with B to steal 1,000 rupees. Now tomorrow B may say that I will not steal this 1,000 rupees. So now A cannot go to the court and say you enforce the agreement between us, you compel B to steal 1,000 rupees, because stealing is an offense, it's an illegal objective. So you can't have an agreement for any illegal objective. That is why this agreement will never be a contract. It will only remain to be a agreement. Now suppose they enters. Now A enters. Suppose B is seller of rice. A enters into agreement with B to sell rice for 50 rupees per kg. Now this guy B, he says, now I won't, though I have entered into an agreement with you, but I refuse to follow the agreement and I will not sell the rice to you for 50 rupees kg. I'll sell it to 80. Suppose, or I'll not sell to you at all. So in this case, definitely this guy A, this person can go to the court and say that enforce this agreement and bound B, direct B to sell the rice to me. Now court can do that in this case because the object is lawful. There's nothing wrong here. It's a commercial case. Okay. So you understand this is a contract. This is purely an agreement, not more than that. So something which is enforced by the law will automatically become a agreement. Something not enforced by the law is only agreement. Enforced is contract. So that is why the statement all contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not contracts. So the contract consists of two essential elements. An agreement, first of all, there has been an agreement. Okay, two people should agree to do something. Its enforceability by law. What is an agreement? Let us first of all understand. It's a very normal English word. The term agreement, it's also though defined. Given in section 2E of the Act, is defined as every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. Now, two kinds of promises are there, every promise, okay, and every set of promises. A promise may be a single promise or it may be a set of promises. I may promise someone that I will sell you a mobile, then I'll sell you on next month, I'll sell you uh, rice, on the next month, I'll sell you wheat, on the next month, I'll construct something for you. So, these are set of promises, or there may be a single promise, I'll sell you something. Okay, so every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. Consideration, what is consideration? Consideration means something of value in terms of rupees. Something of value in terms of rupees. So I say I sell you wheat. So wheat has a value in terms of rupees. Okay, it is a commercial commodity. It has a value in terms of rupees. So that will become a consideration. But yes, we will do this part consideration in detail later on. Understand right now we are on agreement. What is agreement? Every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. Now, when two people or two parties are entering into a contract, definitely the contract is done for some commercial purpose. Okay, contracts, when we deal with the contract term contract in the Indian Contract Act, we are dealing with only those contracts which are having commercial outlinings. We are not dealing with emotional contracts or contracts of other nature like religious contracts or social contracts. No, we are dealing with only commercial contracts. So commercial means something which is having a value in terms of rupees. Okay. So any promise and every set of promise which is made in such a case that they form consideration for each other. Okay. To have an insight into the definition of agreement, we need to understand promise. Okay. Now let us understand what is a promise. When the person, section 2b defines promise as when the person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent thereto The proposal is said to be accepted. Proposal when accepted becomes a promise. When the person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. Proposal, when accepted, becomes a promise. Now, let us understand this definition, analyze this definition minutely. When the person to whom the proposal is made, that means, let us understand it by an example. There is a person to whom promise is made. Suppose a promise is made to A. I'll give you a situation. A agrees to supply 50 kg rice to B. Now, in this case, A is making a promise to B. Okay, A is making a promise to B that he will supply 50 kg rice. Okay, so when the person to whom the proposal is made, now it is a proposal. To whom this proposal is made to B, signifies his assent on that proposal. Let us clarify this proposal further. 50 kg rice to B. At 100 rupees per kg. Now let us signifies his assent on that proposal. Now this is the proposal that I'll supply you 50 kg rice at this price. Now B says okay, let's do it. Signifies his assent. Now B has signified his assent to A. The proposal becomes accepted. That means B has accepted the proposal made by A. Okay. Now what will happen? Accepted proposal becomes a promise. Now it has become a promise that yes, now they both people are now bound to agree to each other. Now this is a promise. Thus, we say that an agreement is the result of the proposal made by one party to the other party, and the other party gives his acceptance thereto, of course, for mutual consideration. Mutual consideration has to be there. Okay, he is selling something, he is buying something, so both are making some profit. So, agreement is offer or proposal plus acceptance. Offer or proposal is the synonymous terms. Somebody makes an offer and somebody accepts it, it becomes agreement. Very simple, no rocket science here. Okay, now there were two terms. First was an agreement. Now we have understood an agreement. Now its enforceability by law. An agreement to become a contract. Now we have understood what how an agreement is made up. Okay, but we discussed that agreement becomes contract only when it is enforced by the law. Okay, an agreement to become a contract must give rise to a legal obligation. The obligation should be legal. Let's go back to this example again. In this example, he says A enters in agreement with B to steal 1,000 rupees. Okay, so now this obligation has to be legal obligation. Now B does not have any legal obligation to commit an offense for A. Okay, nobody in this world can have a legal obligation to commit an offense for somebody else. So there is no legal obligation at all in this case. But here he has now a legal obligation because selling rice is a commercial activity and nothing unlawful with it. Thus, from above definition, it can be concluded that contract is equal to accepted proposal, that is agreement. What is agreement? Offer plus acceptance plus enforceability by the law. Accepted proposal plus enforceability by the law is contract. On elaborating the above two concepts, it is obvious that contract comprises of an agreement which is a promise or a set of reciprocal promises. Okay, reciprocal promises means A agrees to supply 50 kg rice. He says, I'll pay you 100 rupees. He is promising rice, he is promising money. These are reciprocal promises. That a promise is the acceptance of a proposal giving rise to a binding contract. Further, section 2H requires an agreement to be worthy of being enforceable by law before it is called a contract. Okay, enforceability of law has to be there if you want to call an agreement a contract. Where parties have made a binding contract, they created rights and obligations between themselves. This is an example. A agrees with B to sell car for 2 lakhs to B. Here A is under an obligation to give car to B and B has the right to receive the car on payment of 2 lakhs rupees. Okay. Now there is a proposal to sell the car and a proposal from B side is for 2 lakhs rupees. Okay. And also B is under obligation to pay 2 lakhs to an A and A has right to receive 2 lakhs. So this is a perfect contract, no issues with this. So the law of contract deals with only such legal obligations which has resulted from agreement. Such obligation must be contractual in nature. However, some obligations are outside the purview of the law of contract. Okay. So there may be different types of agreements. Okay, it is not that law of contract will enforce each and every agreement in the law. It will enforce only limited agreements. Let's have an example. An obligation to maintain wife and children, an order of the court of law. Okay, these are status obligations and so out of the scope of the contract. They are two statements, an obligation to maintain wife and children. Now suppose I marry and I have a wife and I have a children. Okay, so I have an obligation to maintain them, I have an obligation to provide for my wife and children. This is not, there is no contract between my children and me, between my wife and me. Okay, it is the obligation which I have to fulfill. So tomorrow my child or my wife cannot drag me to court saying that we want a luxury car. Okay, I may not be able to have a car. They cannot say that he has taken an obligation to fulfill our wishes. Okay, this is not something which can be enforced in the law. An order of the court of law. So when the court is ordering someone to do something, okay, court directs someone to pay this much amount, this is the obligation taken under the law. Okay, this is not a contract between me and the law, between me and the court. Okay, these obligations are outside the purview of the contract act. Or let us take an example, there are other obligations as well. There may be a social obligation. Okay, there may be a social obligation. I agree So in this situation, I agreed to go for a movie with B, but B buys tickets, but I could not go. Now B cannot sue me. B cannot take me to the court and say to the ask the court to enforce the contract and bound me to go to the court, bind me to go and watch a movie. No, this is not a commercial contract. It is only purely a social contract and emotional contract. Okay, so I cannot be made bound to do so. Okay, this is not a commercial contract, or there may be a religious contract. Yes, agreement. Okay. Now, priest tells me that if I perform some worship, okay, which cost me 11,000 rupees, I have to pay 11,000 rupees to priest and then he'll assist me in performing some puja or worship. Then I will get good marks. So upon the result, I fail. Okay, now I fail. Forget about getting good marks. I could not even clear the subject. In this case, I cannot take this priest to the court and say that this person entered into an agreement with me and due to this agreement, he did not perform puja well enough so that because I failed. Okay, now this kind of contract is a religious agreement, it cannot be fulfilled. So some obligations like social or religious agreements or emotional, purely emotional agreements. Okay, I promise someone to marry. Later on, I do not marry. Okay, these things cannot be a contract. Okay, these may be an agreement. Okay, these may be a social agreement or a religious agreement, but they can definitely never become a contract, because in Indian Contract Act, when we talk about a contract, we only talk about agreements which have commercial undertones. Okay, some commercial value. Now let's understand the stages of contract. First of all, there is going to be a proposal or offer. Okay, will you purchase wheat from me? Then acceptance. Yes, at 100 rupees per kg price. Accepted proposal. Okay, my proposal is accepted. I also accept his acceptance. Now that is legal enforceable. Okay, we can enforce it against each other in the court of law, and when it is enforced by the law, it becomes a contract. Now let us understand difference between an agreement and the contract. Agreement is every promise and every set of promise forming the acceptance for each other plus acceptance. Simply offer plus acceptance is agreement. Contract is when this agreement is enforceable by the law. Okay, then it becomes a contract. Scope, it is wider term including both legal and social agreements. Agreement can be of any nature, like we just discussed. It can even be religious. Okay, so it is a wider term, but the contract is very specific term only in the terms of commercial sense, so it is a narrow term. Legal obligation, it may not create legal obligation. Every agreement may not create a legal obligation. Okay, but in this case, when you are talking about a contract, definitely legal obligations are created between the parties every time you enter into a contract. All agreements are not contracts, all contracts are agreements. We have done discussed this statement in detail already. Now we'll do essentials of a valid contract. Okay, what are the essentials of a valid contract? Now there are some, we can see 6 or 5, 11 points we are discussing. These 6 points are which prescribed by the section 10 of the Indian Contract Act. Then there are some points which are 5 points which are not given by the Indian Contract Act, but they are also considered essential. Why they are considered essential? Because due to the different legal decisions of the high courts and supreme courts, these new kind of rights have also essentialities have also become essential in the contract, though they are not written. Okay, but now they are followed because of the legal decisions, and we know in India we follow court decisions as well as the law written by the act. In terms of section 10 of the act, all agreements are contracts if they are made by the free consent of the parties competent to contract for a lawful consideration and with a lawful object, and are not expressly declared void. Okay, section 10 says all agreements are contracts. First of all, every agreement is a contract provided, provided if they are made by free consent. There has to be, now this is the essentials, now they are talking about the essentials. Free consent has to be there of the parties. Competent to contract, parties must be competent as well. Free consent has to be there, party must be competent as well. For a lawful consideration, consideration has to be there, but that too with a lawful consideration, with a lawful object. Object has to be lawful. Okay, and are not expressly declared to be void, should not be declared void. So these are the essentialities given in the section 10. Okay, now let us understand this contract, this definition, and analyze it. Okay, and section 10, let us also, before understanding it properly, I need to tell you that it's not a complete and exhaustive. Exhaustive means these are not the only essentials. Okay, there are some more essentials. So like we discussed, five other essentials which are not prescribed by the act. So this section is not exhaustive one. So there are certain other sections which also contain requirements for an agreement to be enforceable. Thus, in order to create a valid contract, the following elements should be present. Let us understand what are the elements. Two parties must be there. First of all, there must be two parties. That means A cannot A cannot enter into contract with himself. Okay, we all at the special time of the new year make a lot of resolutions with ourselves that we'll be fit this year, we'll study hard, we'll drop the bad habits and this and that. Okay, the what are we doing? We are trying to enter into contract with ourselves. Okay, but that contract, that agreement cannot be enforced. Okay, why? Because this contract is not a valid contract. Every valid contract requires two party. We cannot enter into a contract with ourselves only. Okay, one cannot contract with himself. A contract involves at least two parties, one party making the offer and other party accepting it. A contract may be made by natural persons and by other persons having legal existence. Like companies can also enter into contract, and a natural person like you and me also can enter into a contract. Universities, etc. It is necessary to remember that identity of parties be ascertainable. Okay, identity should be ascertainable. If we are talking about Ram, we should know which Ram we are talking about. Ram, son of so and so, residence of so and so, Aadhaar card so and so. Because otherwise, there are so many Rams. Simply a contract cannot be like Ram enter into contract with Shama. Okay, it should be Ram which Ram and Sham which Sham. Okay, let's have an example. To constitute a contract of sale, there must be two parties. One has to be seller and one has to be a buyer. The seller and buyer must be two different persons. Okay, because a person cannot buy his own goods. Okay, and a person definitely cannot buy his own properties. Let us discuss it with help of a case law. State of Gujarat versus Ramlal S. and Company. When on dissolution of a partnership, the assets of the firm were divided among the partners. The sales tax officer wanted to tax this transaction. It was held that it was not a sale. The partners, being joint owner of those assets, cannot be both buyer and seller. Okay, a partnership got dissolved. Suppose there were three partners. Okay, so when partnership dissolves, the whatever the assets of the partnership were divided between three members. Okay, so now after this division, the sales tax officer said that I'll put a sales tax over this. Whatever property you have received from the partnership, I'll put a sales tax over this. The partner who received this notice, he rejected this argument. He said, no, because I being a partner, every partner in a company or in a partnership are the co-owners. Okay, so when partnership is divided, what a partner is receiving is his share only. So his share was his only. So when he is receiving his share, where is the provision for sale and purchase? Okay. So he already owned those assets. Okay. So there cannot be a sale between himself. Okay. So in this case, court said, yes, whatever this person is saying is right. Sales tax cannot be imposed on this person because partnership is jointly owned by people, okay, by partners. So when there's a division of property, we cannot put a sales tax because there was no contract, no seller, no buyer was there. It was only a kind of partition of the property already owned by these partners. Parties must intend to create a legal obligations. Intention has to be there. Okay, they must also intend. Okay, there must be an intention on the part. Intention means mental certainty. Okay, social or domestic type of agreements, like we just discussed above, social or religious agreements, are not enforceable in the court of law and hence they do not result into contracts. A husband agreed to pay to his wife certain amount as maintenance every month while he was abroad. Okay, husband failed to pay that promised amount. Wife sued him for recovery of the amount. Here in this case, wife could not recover as it was a social agreement between husband and wife and parties did not intend to create any legal relation. Okay, the case law is Balfour versus Balfour. Okay, because the husband said that it's okay, I'm going abroad and for your upkeep, I'll keep sending some money. Okay, that doesn't mean that he has entered into a contract with his wife. Some may agree, some may argue that husband has a obligation to maintain wife. Okay, yes, he has an obligation, but that obligation cannot be in such a way that whatever you promised, you must pay that only. Suppose he had promised to say to pay 400 rupees per month. Now he's sending only 200. So he's definitely maintaining her, but he cannot be made, he cannot be compelled to maintain her the way she wants. Okay, the maintenance has to be substantial maintenance, but it cannot be a luxurious maintenance. Other formalities to be completed within certain cases. In case of certain contracts, the contracts must be in writing. See, though there is no such compulsion in the Indian Contract Act. Okay, contract can be oral as well as written. Our Indian Contract Act do not prescribe that a contract has to be written only. It can be an oral contract only as well. Okay, oral contracts are also enforceable. In cases of certain contracts, the contracts must be in writing. But in certain cases, okay, the contracts have to be in writing. Okay, why? Because the law suggests so. Contract of insurance, okay, is not valid except as a written contract. Contract of insurance has to be a written contract. Why? Because our IRDA or Insurance Regulatory Development Authority says so. So that is why it's a written contract. Further, in cases of certain contracts, registration of contract under the laws which is enforced at the time is essential for it to be valid, like in the case of immovable property. Okay, suppose I am going to transfer my property, I am going to transfer my land to someone, I am going to sell it. So there, in that case, it not only has to be written, but it has to be registered as well. Okay, you have to pay a registration duty as well, stamp duty it is called. So until and unless you pay that stamp duty or you get it registered, you cannot have a valid contract of sale and purchase of the immovable property. So these are the requirements which are provided by other acts, like this is for Insurance Act, this is by the Registration of the Property Act, and this and that. Okay, but Indian Contract Act per se does not prescribe any means. For Indian Contract Act, it can be both ways. It can be written, it can be oral as well as. Certainty of meaning. The agreement must be certain and not vague or indefinite. Okay, it must be certain. Okay, it must be certain, not vague or indefinite. Vague means confusing. Okay, vague means confusing. Indefinite means set time limit. There has to be time limit within which that particular action has to be performed, promise has to be carried out. A agrees to sell to be 100 tons of oil. Now, this statement itself may appear to you that it's a perfect agreement. Why? Because A is there, B is there, A agrees, B accepted 100 ton of oil. Okay, a commercial contract. But there is nothing certain in order to show what kind of oil. We have different kind of oil. There may be olive oil, mustard oil, diesel, kerosene. So many oils are there. So this contract is not going to be a valid contract because the contract is not certain. It is not certain as to which oil. It is vague. Oil, but what oil? Okay. Neither it is there in what time. Okay, it's not indefinite. It's not even it doesn't even has a time limit. Ton of oil in what time? By 2 months, by 3 months, by year, 2 year, 10 year, what? Whenever he wishes to or whenever he asks. No, this cannot be the case. Possibility of performance of an agreement. The terms of agreement should be capable of performance. Okay, an agreement to do an act impossible in itself cannot be enforced. Okay, so this is the other essential of the valid contract, that the performance of the contract should be possible. Okay, like I can say you pay me 1,000 rupees and I'll go to the moon, I'll bring the moon to you. It cannot be done. Okay, I cannot definitely bring moon on the earth, so that is impossible. Okay, a agrees to A agrees with B to discover treasure by magic. The agreement cannot be enforced as it is not possible to be performed. Okay, discover treasure by magic. How can you discover a treasure by magic? It may be happening in the movies, but it cannot happen in the real life. Okay, or I enter into a contract with a person who does not have both legs that you have to play football for me in my football league. That is impossible. That can't be done. According to Section 10 of the Indian Contract Act. Now, these five essentials were those essentials which came out of judicial decisions. Okay, but now let us discuss those essentials which are prescribed by the Section 10 of the Indian Contract Act when we read the definition. Offer and acceptance or an agreement. An agreement is the first essential of a valid contract. Okay, first essential of the valid contract as per Section 10 is there has to be a agreement. Okay, every promise, this is just the definition how a promise, how an agreement is offer made by one and accepted by another, then it becomes an agreement. Okay, so every essential contract must be an agreement. Free consent. Okay, consent means willingness. Without compulsion. Okay, free consent, it should be out of the willingness, which is without any compulsion. Two or more persons are said to consent when they agree upon the same thing in same sense. They should agree upon the same thing in same sense. Okay. Okay, A takes B to his horse stable where he has three black horses. A tells B that A would sell black horse on left to B for 500 rupees. Now they are facing each other. Okay, so the left to the A would become right to the B. Okay, so when A said black horse on left, A meant the horse to his left and B understood it as a horse on towards his left. Okay, so now they do not agree on the same thing. Okay, but because now there are two horses, A is talking about a different horse, B is talking about a thinking about a different horse. Okay, so they do not agree upon same thing in same sense. Okay, so there is a confusion here. So this is not going to be a consent which is a free consent because they both do not know what they are talking. This can also be understood as identity of minds. Identity of minds. Okay, here they don't have any identity of minds. He's identifying with horse on left, he's identifying horse on his left, and both are facing each other. The term is called consensus ad idem. Further, such a consent must be free. The consent must also be free. Consent would be considered as free consent if it is not caused by coercion. Coercion means threat. Okay, I put a gun on someone and ask him to sign on the papers. Definitely, he is going to sign because his life is at threat. Okay, but we cannot say that this person was having a free consent. Okay, so this is not going to be a valid contract at all because his consent was not free consent, his consent was under threat by me. Undue influence. Okay, undue control. I'm okay. So in undue influence means you have an undue control over something. Now A is employed with B, okay? So B is the employer, okay? B is the employer and he decides whether A would get promotion or not. So now they are both entering into a contract. In this case, it can be said that this person A was under undue influence by the B. Why? Because B has the power to control the choice of this person. Okay, though now there is no literally there is no threat here. He has not said that I will not promote you, but definitely this sense is always there in this person that he is my superior. If I refuse the duties of my superior, if I do not enter into contact with my superior, he is not going to promote me. Or A has a religious guru. Okay, and A has some land as well. Now Guru asks A to sell the land at low rates for the ashram, for construction of the ashram. And the god will grant him nirvana, moksha, or heaven. Okay, so now this is there is an undue influence because the guru is trying to manipulate him by telling him that he will go to heaven if he sells this land for construction of ashram at very low prices. Otherwise, A would not nobody would sell the land at a lower price. Fraud. Okay. Okay, A enters into contract with B for sale of basmati rice, but the rice is not basmati, and A knows this. Okay, so now what he is doing is committing a fraud upon B. He is trying to sell rice which is not basmati as a basmati rice. Okay, basmati is a superior grade of rice. It extracts a higher value in the market and has a high demand as well. Okay, so A is going to sell him rice which is not basmati rice, which A knows and B does not know. So he is committing fraud upon the B or misrepresentation. Okay, or there may be a misrepresentation when he is also making a misrepresentation. And misrepresentation and fraud are somehow different. Here, in first case, it will be fraud when A knows that B that I am selling rice as basmati rice to B, but it is not a basmati rice. A knows it. It is a fraud. But it will be misrepresentation when A himself also does not know that the rice he has is not a basmati rice. In case it will be a misrepresentation, not a fraud. Suppose now A commits a fraud upon B and sells a rice as a basmati rice. Now definitely this guy will also sell this rice to someone. He'll sell the rice to C saying that this is a basmati rice. Now C says we have committed fraud upon me. It cannot be the case because B also does not know that this rice is not a basmati rice. Here it is only a case of misrepresentation or mistake. There will be a mistake. Oh no, in this case, A says to B that I will sell my horse to B. Okay, but in meanwhile the horse has died and A does not know that horse has died. Now tomorrow B will say that you sell me your horse then. How can A sell the horse now when the horse has already died? So in this case the contract was made under mistake. Okay, so these are the things which can vitiate a free consent, which can decide whether the consent was free or not. Okay, if there is a coercion, it's not a free consent. If the consent was under the undue influence, then it's not a free consent. If there was a fraud, no free consent. Misrepresentation, no free consent. Mistake, no free consent at all. Why? Because he could not have sold the horse at all because horse has died. Something like this. When consent to an agreement is caused by coercion, undue influence, fraud, or misrepresentation, the agreement is a contract voidable at the option of the party whose consent was so caused. When consent is vitiated by mistake, the contract becomes void. Okay. Now let us read these agreements differently. In these four cases, coercion, undue influence, fraud, or misrepresentation, okay, the agreement is voidable at the option of party whose consent was so caused. Okay, agreement is voidable. Now I say to someone that I will shoot you if you do not sell me your land. Okay, he has sold his land, but tomorrow he may not go to the court and he say it's okay, I follow this contract, I have no issues. Then nothing can be done. Okay, or someone commits a fraud upon other person. Now he knows that there was a fraud, but he chooses to follow the contract. Still he wants to follow the contract even when he knows that his consent was obtained by fraud. Then also he is willing to follow it. Then it's okay because it's
It's
voidable
seven
at the
o'clock.
option of party whose consent was so caused. Okay, it's voidable only the party whose consent was taken by these processes can repudiate the contract. Okay, only this party can say I will not follow the contract, and even if the party wants to follow the contract, nobody has an issue, you can follow it. Free consent is vitiated by mistake. When the consent is vitiated by the mistake, the contract becomes void. But when there's a mistake of fact, the contract will be void because now the contract cannot be performed at all. Okay, now let us take this case. A says he will sell the horse to B, but the horse has died. There's a mistake by A. He never knew the horse has already died. Now, even if the person, the B, wants to perform the contract or wants A to perform the contract, A cannot because horse is not there. In this case, the contract will become void. Void means non-existent, never existed. Okay, in these cases the contract will be voidable. If other party will want to treat it like a void contract, it will become a contract which never existed. But if the other party still wants to follow the contract, then the contract will become a valid contract. Okay, A threatened to shoot B if B does not lend him 2000 and B agreed to do it. Here the agreement is entered into the under coercion and hence voidable at the option of B. Capacity of the parties. Capacity means whether parties are able to enter into contract or not. Capacity is ability. Capacity to contract means the legal ability of a person to enter into a valid contract. Section 11 of the Indian Contract Act specifies that every person is competent to carry. Now, Section 11 says every person is competent to contract. Who is competent to contract is of the age of majority according to the law to which he is subject. Someone who has age of majority is adulthood is 18 years age. Anyone who is 18 years plus, he is competent to enter into a contract. He is of sound mind. He should not be an idiot. He should not be lunatic, mentally challenged. He should not be idiot. Okay, or he should not be under the influence of excessive alcohol, so much alcohol which has rendered his mind as unsound, or has taken some drugs or under some medication which is having an effect over his sound mind. Okay, psychotropic drugs are there. Is not otherwise disqualified from contracted by any law to which he is subject. Is not otherwise disqualified. Who is disqualified to not enter into contract? Someone who is insolvent. A bankrupt person is disqualified to enter into a contract, so he cannot enter into a contract in this case. Okay. A person competent to contract must fulfill all the above three qualifications. A refers to the age of contracting person. The person entering into contract must be 18 years of age. Okay, a person below 18 years of age are considered minor, therefore incompetent to contract. Requires a person to be of sound mind. B, he should be in his senses so that he understands the implication of the contract at the time of entering into contract, so that he should have a choice as to understand what he is entering into a contract and what will be the implications of those contract. Okay, a lunatic, an idiot, a drunken person, or under the influence of some intoxicant is not supposed to be a person of sound mind. C requires that a person entering into a contract should not be disqualified by his status in entering into such contracts. Such persons are an alien enemy, foreign sovereigns, convicts, etc. They are disqualified unless they fulfill certain formalities by the law. Contract entered by person not competent to contract are not valid. Okay, so some alien enemy, like we are at war with the Pakistan, suppose, and Pakistan alien enemy, like we discussed in the case of company law. Okay, in the Daimler's case, we are at a war with some country, and then war country person enters into contract. That contract will not be a valid contract because we cannot enter into a contract with the alien enemy. Foreign sovereigns means foreign governors, okay, or chief ministers. We cannot enter in contract with them, or some convicts or bankrupts.